Happy Halloween, everyone, from Clay Formations. Yes, it's that glorious time of the year we all long for after the 1st of November, when the weather turns cool and the orange, purple, and black decorations come out, and we plunge our cutting tools into innocent pumpkins, carving them into ghoulish monsters. But wait, we'll have to be careful this year. The pumpkin carver is out looking for those who dare to wander late at night to carve them into his version of Halloween ghouls. Alright, let's get this thing started. We have our wooden base with the hole for the armature, 4 holes for the flange. Here's the flange that will be connecting to the beast. 4 screws, and a screwdriver of the Philippe's version. Here's the bones of the pumpkin carver. And here are 2 hands that I made off camera, but we're going to be redoing those later on in the video. Let's take all this stuff and put it together. This is something that I always have to do. A lot of sculptors can hold their piece with one hand and sculpt with the other, but 95% of the time I have to have a solid base to work off of because I need my other hand to steady my sculpting hand. Now that the flange is fully attached to the wood, I can take it and attach it to the beast. Just basically a lathe chuck head that I tighten up around the bottom part of the flange, and it doesn't go anywhere. Plus, I can do this. It's very convenient to put the sculpture at any angle you need. Now we'll permanently attach the pumpkin carver's bones to the base, and then we'll check to see if the hands work. Not too bad. Now we'll take them off and we'll attach them to the base permanently with some Epoxyy Sculpt. And we'll just go ahead and put some Epoxyy Sculpt all the way up to his shoulders just to give him some extra strength. Although that doesn't really work, he still shakes like a maraca through the whole process. Here's my conditioned clay, and now we can put all the clay around his very vine body. Get it? Pumpkin vine? I think if you have to say get it, then the joke didn't land right. So if you laughed, thank you. I appreciate it. Now that I've gotten the clay up to the shoulders, what I'm going to try to do is twist the clay to make it look like a pumpkin vine, which was really kind of strange because I would begin to twist it one way. I would get to a certain point, and then it's like I would be twisting it in the wrong direction and it would create an air bubble. So I would have to go back and untwist it and retwist it again, or I would have to cut the clay open and force the air out and then redo it. So what I would suggest that if you're going to make a vine out of clay, make sure you start at one end and twist it all in the same direction all the way up to the end of what you're going to be sculpting. That way you won't have any trouble. And that's why I'm here, people, to make the mistakes so you don't have to. And as usual, we'll go ahead and put some liquid Sculpey all over his head and start putting the clay on. And this is when we get into the weird and wonky stage of the sculpture. As you can see, the clay is about 1/4 of an inch thick, and I put it together in like puzzle pieces. And the reason why I do this is because I want to keep a consistent thickness throughout the entire ball. And it also saves me a little bit of time blending it all in and scraping it down and getting it round. I have done it before where I've used one sheet to cover an entire head of a sculpture. But what happens is it ends up being thin on one side and all the rest of the clay is on the other side, and I have to cut it off and smooth it out and try to make it round again. This way, it's already round, and all I have to do is blend it in, scrape it a little bit, and here you go. All nice and round, ready to go. Alright, now it's ready to start shaping it into a pumpkin, which was rather difficult at this point because the armature kept wobbling around and my base kept moving the sculpture all over the place, and I really couldn't get a hold of it, so I finally give up and I just pull the head off. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a wire in there and I'm going to cut the pumpkin lines in and figure out a new way to do this. But unfortunately, with the wire there, he's going to be upside down. I'll use my sculpting thingamajig handle to tackle this job. Just put that in there, and then I can go ahead and carve the rest of the pumpkin sections out. And this is where the thickness of the clay comes in handy, because I really didn't have to worry about it being too thin and hitting the armature at all. I could pretty much carve as much as I wanted to out. After I get it to this point, I can put it back on the main jig and refine it a little more. Now remember, I'm working on his bottom here. Not his actual bottom, but the bottom of his head. You know, like the top of your head and the bottom of your head. He doesn't have an actual bottom because it's just a vine, but of course every bottom needs a nub. Bottom nub of the pumpkin bottom nub. Excuse me guys while I pull my head out of the gutter and I put his head back on. Okay, come on, let's focus now. Put his head back on and we'll put a little bit of Epoxy Sculpt around the top of his head. That way it won't fall off. That would be a tragedy of sadness if his head fell off. Now I'll refine his very fine looking vine, and then I'll go ahead and start working on his head stem. This was probably my most favorite part of the sculpture, because if you can get the pumpkin stem to look real, it will end up making the whole pumpkin look real. I probably could have stopped right there with the pumpkin stem, but I decided to go ahead and give him some appendages that were sort of growing into the sides of his head. I thought it looked kind of cool. I don't know, what do you guys think? Or it could be that I was just stalling because the next part coming up was going to be very, very difficult to do. And here's what I'm talking about. Let's see if this works. Okay, 1 and 2. Alright, let's see if I can get these out without messing up the insides of the eyes. Whew, okay, got it. Okay, now we'll move on to the mouth. What I was really trying to accomplish is to get a really good clean line so it looked like a real pumpkin that was carved with a knife. And later on in the video, I'll show you how I do the eyes and the mouth to really give it some depth. Now we'll clean up the inside of his mouth, and then we'll move on to the next part of the sculpture, which will be his hands. And I think you're going to like it. Now here's the completed hand right here. 3 fingers, 1 thumb. So what we'll do is we'll get 3 strands of wire, pretty close to the same length, but it really doesn't matter at this point. Then what we'll do is we'll clamp them on one end, and we'll twist all 3 of the fingers together. Then what we'll do is we'll cut off the excess to make the fingers. And there you go, 3 fingers. But we need a thumb. So we'll take a 4th piece of wire and wrap it around the bottom to make the thumb. We'll adjust all the fingers. And before you know it, you got 2 sets of hands. And always remember, keep both of the thumbs on the inside. Now I'm going to show you something really cool. We're going to take some liquid beige Sculpey. We're going to squirt it into a bowl. And then we're going to take our brush and we're going to brush the liquid Sculpey onto the wire. And it doesn't have to be pretty either, because his hands are supposed to be all vines and twisted and everything, so we can make it as ugly as we want. Now after we get it all refined, we're going to take the heat gun and cure it a little bit. Then we'll add some more, and then we'll cure it a little bit more. There we go. Now we'll add some more and cure it again. And you can repeat this process as many times as you want to. Now check this out. After it's cured, you can bend it and pose the hand in whatever position you want to, and that's going to come in handy later on. But right now, we have to attach the hands to the arms. So I took some aluminum tubing and I attached them to the armature, and then I took the hands and I glued them inside the tube. That'll give us a nice even taper when we go to sculpt the arms. In fact, that's what we'll do right now. We'll add some clay to the arms and we will create a very vine-looking arm. Now we'll give him some vine-looking wrists and give him some vine-looking shoulders. I gotta stop doing that. I promise, and I give you my word, no more vine jokes. Oop, I did it again. Okay, promise, no more. That was the last one, I promise. Maybe. Okay, now what I have to do is I have to make the vines go into the base. And I did okay right here, but I really didn't care for it much. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and give it a few vines that are kind of creeping and crawling all over the base, and then sort of make them dangle like he's gripping the bottom of the base. And I think what happened is I was really getting into it. I think I got a little carried away. So don't judge me too harshly, because I get really carried away. Funny thing is, when you're working on a sculpture and you're getting as carried away as I am right now with all these roots and vines going everywhere, I'm not thinking one whip about how I'm going to paint it. And of course, I am going to regret all this stuff that I had fun with while I try to paint all those little nooks and crannies and everything. I mean, even here with all these little tiny pieces of vine that I'm wrapping around him to give him a little more texture, I didn't realize it until after I baked it. When I paint these are going to be so brittle, they're all going to break off and they're going to look crappy and all that. But spoiler, only one piece breaks off. I was absolutely amazed. All right, let's take this guy off and bake him. Now on to the next adventure. We're going to make one of these. Yes, I made some out of Sculpey to begin with, and of course, in the process of making them out of Sculpey, the stupid thing broke. Should have used Epoxy Sculpt all along. So we're going to take some Epoxy Sculpt, mix it up. Pretty good, huh? Now we'll flatten them out, and then we'll use the old Sculpey knives to measure it out. And now we're going to take these off to cure. Now we'll use some Mosu Black to paint the inside of the eyes. That way the inside of the eyes will be completely black. And I had to make sure that I didn't get any black paint on the edges of the mouth, because I had to cover it with a pale yellow, and I never would have covered it with a pale yellow with a million coats. Now we'll go ahead and give him some jagged looking teeth. And just a FYI, Sculpey will not stick to Mosu Black whatsoever. I edited most of this out, but literally I could not get the teeth to stick to his mouth. I needed to taper the wrist just a little bit more to make him look a little more natural. Okay, I was dreading this part a little bit. What I have to do now is sketch out the lines of the knives, and then what I need to do is take them out to the garage and grind them down. Now I've got my little pan of water here and some wet sandpaper, and now we're going to go ahead and sand these down to a nice smooth finish. I'll see you in a bit. Now I don't have any fingerprints left, but I've got a nice smooth knife, and I can't stop now because now I've got to sand down his cleaver as well. And there you go, one cleaver. Now a knife's not complete without their wooden handle, so I'll go ahead and cut out some balsa wood. And then I'll take each piece and glue it to both sides of the knife. There we go. They weren't big enough, so I had to put a little bit of extra on there to cover the whole tang. And we'll do the same thing with the cleaver here. We'll glue one side on, glue the other side, cut a piece in half, and then the whole thing's covered. Now I'll take my X-Acto knife and trim the edges down. Not too bad. Starting to look like a knife. Now I'll go ahead and sand the rest of it down and blend it into the knife. There we go. Not too bad. Now, you know those three little dots that are on the sides of knife handles? I decided to go ahead and drill 3 holes in the handle and then fill it with some translucent Sculpey to give it that effect. Now I'll use a brown Sharpie to make it look like it's stained wood. That'll do, but it needs one more thing. Oh yeah, some Krylon silver chrome paint. Look at that. It really turned out good. It's got a nice reflection. It almost looks real. Now let's take all that tape off and see what we've got. Not too shabby. Let's see the knife. You know, that looks pretty good. Things are moving along quite well, so let's go ahead and start painting. I started out with the purple base and I thought I'd add some black and do like a blend from the dark to the purple. And I thought that might be a nice contrast with the brown roots. We'll see how it looks. I went ahead and painted the inside of the roots black, as you can see, but you couldn't really see what I was doing on camera, so I just went ahead and didn't put it in. But you can definitely see how the brown contrasts with the purple. I really liked it. Remember when I said that a part of it would break off? That's the only part that broke right there, that little piece of vine. Now we'll go ahead and start painting his body. I started with a dark chocolate brown, and then later on I'll go ahead and add some highlights to it. And oh, by the way, the paint that I put on the liquid Sculpey that we made the hands out of, even though you paint it, you can still bend it. The paint doesn't crack at all. Painting the orange on first before I complete the brown. After the orange dries, I'll go ahead and paint the brown vine over that. Now we'll add some dry brushing over the vines to bring out all the details. This is why I had to be very careful with the black paint. I'm painting the inside of the pumpkin rind a paler yellow than the bright orange on the outside. I'm only hoping that the bright orange on the outside will actually cover any spots that I go over with the pale yellow. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. And now that we're done with the pale yellow, we can finally paint his bright orange pumpkin head. Now we will very carefully paint the stem and give it a little dry brushing. Hopefully I won't get any on the pumpkin head. Now we'll use some brown pastel powder to give him a little bit of dimension. Now we'll give him his tools of his trade. And the pumpkin carver is ready for Halloween night. Hey guys, if you've made it this far, you are a rock star, and I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. If you think I deserve it, give this video a thumbs up. If you didn't, thanks for sticking around anyway. For those of you who would like to see more, please consider subscribing. And a big thank you to all my subscribers. I can't tell you how much you mean to me. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody have a safe and happy Halloween, and try to eat as much candy as you possibly can, because that's what I'm gonna do. Everybody take care, and we'll see you next time.